Okay, so welcome to the Node.js Technical Steering Committee meeting for March 23rd, 2022. We'll follow the issue that was opened in the TSC repo for this meeting, which is issue number 1191. Before we get started, does anybody have any announcements they'd like to share? Okay, if not, we'll move on to the issues that were tagged for the agenda. The first one is 40817, add resume CI label to issues. I'm going to open that up. Take a quick look at the last status. If anybody was the one who opened that or put it on, feel free to jump in. Right, we had some discussion. This is basically over whether we want a label that says, let's just resume the CI versus having to do it in the issue itself, like going through Jenkins and doing it. So I don't know if people here have any thoughts on that.
Is there anything left to discuss? I thought we had discussed this before. I don't remember what the remaining blockers were on this, other than someone would need to volunteer to do the work to get the label working. But,
right.
Yeah, I agree. I think we can probably just remove the label.
Was that the resume CI one? Maybe it was. I'm just looking at the past minutes to see if that's what we documented. So
that was my understanding, because we'd already done the sort of question about triages being able to start CIs. That was dealt with, I think, when triages were first introduced quite a long time ago.
Right.
So we'd already made the decision that we would allow triages to start CIs via labels. I think it was more we would allow it and revise if anything untoward happened, but I don't believe anything has. So I think it'll be the same for this sort of resume. Theoretically, there could be sort of things that might happen, but that's the same with collaborators, and we haven't seen any evidence that the triages are more or less responsible with their sort of starting of CIs, or at least to the extent of their abilities to do so. So in terms of the resume,
I'm just trying to find where we wrote that down, because we didn't ended up getting it into that issue itself, which is kind of important. I'm looking, there's the 10th, the minutes for the 10th. Okay, so there's another issue. Right, so I think it was discussed in this one. And we commented on here. I'm just going to paste it into the chat. Everyone. Right, so I think that's where that was the one that was on the agenda before. Okay. And let me just, okay, I'm just gonna put it in here, discuss in previous TSC meeting. And I'm going to put the minutes to that meeting. Copy link address. Moving from TSC agenda, as we don't think more, as we think. Okay, questions have been answered. Okay, comments. Remove from agenda so that it doesn't show up again. Okay, so next one is rename default branch from master to main. I haven't had time to go back. I poked a few of the issues a few weeks ago, but I don't think there's any updates unless anybody else has an update.
No, you tagged me on a few of them and I've got no updates.
Yeah, so when we get back, hopefully after maybe we're ready for once we get all the platform updates and stuff for 18, that might be something we can go back and take a look at. The next one, number 1187, is no distributions are not affected the same way by security releases. So this is one I think I tagged for the agenda. It is the TSC question that I added was like, do we have any concerns with adding by default to security pre-announces if they're just OpenSSL security releases, the following text, which would be, if you're using a Node.js version, which is part of a Linux distribution, which uses a system installed OpenSSL, the security update might not concern you. Please check with their security team. And it came from an issue that was opened by, I think they're part of, I think it's Ubuntu Debian side of things. I know that the same is true for RHEL, in that, for RHEL, the OpenSSL, the node that comes with RHEL is not built using the built-in OpenSSL. It's built so that it uses shared OpenSSL. So like an OpenSSL only security release doesn't affect that binary. And that's where sort of the context. I see Nikita has his hand up.
Yes, this likely affects more distributions than just RHEL and Debian, but this also might work both ways. And perhaps the users should be reminded to update OpenSSL if they have to. Like the wording that was proposed there just says that it might not be of concern, but perhaps they should update OpenSSL in some cases. Like it doesn't mean that they shouldn't update OpenSSL. And
it maybe it's that we could add into that. You might
Yes.
need to update your OpenSSL instead.
yes, that also we need to be very careful for this to be added to pronouncements that are not just OpenSSL updates, because it might be a problem if this gets added to a pronouncement that contains something else.
Right. Agreed. I see Miles has his hand up.
Yeah, I think, and you can correct me if I'm off base on this. I don't actually think that this problem is even, like specific to security releases. It's just like more obvious when it comes to security releases. Like we generally would not have this happen because of how much work we have happening, but there's no reason why we couldn't have a node release that's just an update to deps, right? Like, and so any like distribution that's relying entirely on like doing shared builds of all the stuff that we generally vendor, like it obviously happens practically in a security release where that's the only thing we're updating, but I don't think that's the only time. And we wouldn't all of a sudden not do like a Semver patch release. Like it may not make sense to update those releases on those operating systems, but that's to some capacity, like that's also just saying like, hey, we're changing the version that we're pointing at. I know that's not how like shared libraries works from a package management perspective. But it does lean me towards the won't fix camp here, because like, we vendor dependencies, updating those dependencies as part of our versioning process. And in lieu of like changing the way that we do versioning, I couldn't imagine that there's something to really change there.
I think the only ask here is that in the pre-announce, because I think the thing that people can get is we're shouting that, hey, you better do you better update, security release is coming, you better get ready, you have to update your node. And then people going back to Ubuntu and say, well, where's your new node? And they're like, well, you don't need one. So that's what the ask was from the original poster, was like just that in those announces, we say, yeah, and by the way, this one is actually only OpenSSL, so it may not affect you.
I guess like our security releases can have lots of, I guess this is kind of my point. Our security releases could have lots of other things in there. We may be floating other patches. There may be other things, different operating systems and package distribution, maybe linking some things and not linking other things. I'm not convinced that like,
I identify with this one only because it's more common. Like we quite often have an OpenSSL security release, probably several times a year. You know, for any regular security release that has a bunch of things in it, it's not going to apply, but we do have probably 2-3 a year where it's just an OpenSSL update.
mm-hmm.
And it's only about the pre-release announce. It's not about anything that we do other than in that message that we put on the, that we send to the NodeSec, adding a few lines.
But we have had like pre-release announcements for like a release that we thought was going to only have OpenSSL. But we end up having to make some other changes as well at the same time. I guess like we can do it. I am just concerned about these kinds of blanket statements that maybe don't apply to all circumstances or could be undermined. I don't feel super strongly about it. I'm just not 100% convinced that like it won't create other problems.
The one I can understand is if we said that, then we wouldn't want to, stick in something else that we hadn't planned at the last minute. We don't necessarily want to do that anyway, but it could happen, and it does limit our flexibility on that front.
Yes, I also agree with this, and I'm not sure if this is a good idea to commit to that by default, like try that by default to releases that where we are planning just OpenSSL updates. Perhaps we can have this like form recorded somewhere for the usage, and in case by case basis we can choose to add that to some release where they are entirely sure that there will be just OpenSSL updates. But I also don't feel very good about adding this by default anywhere.
Yeah, I think the only way it's workable is if we actually put it into our like our security, like we have the process. We would need to PR in some words there that would say, in this situation, consider, maybe you could be consider adding this text or something. But if we just leave it as ad hoc, it might as well be we're not doing it, because it just relies on somebody remembering. Or
I don't think it would be very bad if we just forget it in some case, but it could be bad if we accidentally add it when we when we are going to add some other changes to the security update. So I don't think it would be any damage like if we just forget this. So that Hawk scenario looks good, I think.
yeah, so it sounds like a few people do have concern. It'd be helpful if you could maybe comment in the issue. Just, we don't want to just close an issue saying no without some discussion. I don't think there's that. I mean, I just put it on the agenda to get some discussion. So if it sounds like, I don't know if the few people who had some thoughts could add those thoughts to the issue, that would be good. Yeah, and I will promote Tobias.
Tobias,
yes, thanks. Okay, anything more on this one before we move on? Just gonna take some notes here, some discussion. Okay, the next one is publishing specs for buffer and event emitter, number 1176. I think in the past, we might have deferred for when James was here. I don't know if we should do that again, or maybe just consider that, like, I don't see any disagreement in the issue. Maybe just consider an FYI and
I think input from James could be very helpful here because we might be not seeing something. Also, okay, I would +1 to referring this to a later call.
okay, so suggestions, we'll leave it on the agenda, waiting for time we have James.
Yeah, there's not a lot of overhead in just passing on it this week and doing it. Yeah. Maybe even
Okay.
someone might want to ping James, but yeah, either way.
Okay, so then next, that is all of the issues that were tagged for the agenda. We can now flip over to strategic initiatives. So let me take a quick look there. Yeah,
Oh, I think it asked for CPC updates this week. Did we cut that out of the agenda or we skipped over?
I
it?
just missed it, so go for it.
I don't have any. We didn't have a meeting today. This week we had a working group thing, and we just, as you know, Michael, because I think you were there.
Yeah.
We were just cleaning up repositories and stuff, and doing some housekeeping. Did you say that that's accurate?
Yep, I agree. So board meeting is this Friday. So if I don't have anything from the Node project to bring there, but if there is anything, let me know. A similar vein. Okay, sorry, I'm now navigating back to the strategic initiatives. Tom, Mary. So Mary, anything on the future of build chain you want to bring up?
No updates.
Okay. Okay. So I don't think so. Next 10, the two things I will just mention is there is a mini summit planned for April 7th. So if you can plan for that, that'd be great. I hope to get that issue open this week and maybe a few more, more promotion. The other thing I'd mention is there is some good discussion going on related to bundling of Node. Let me just see if I can find that issue quickly. So if you have any interest in that, I think that you'll find that interesting as well. Sorry, I'm just trying to find the PR. Yeah. That's all I had on that front. And I think that takes us to the end of the agenda. Is there anything else that we should discuss before we close out this week? If not, thanks for everybody's time, and we will see you all next time.
Okay, bye.
Bye.